5 deadly beliefs of adult children of narcissists. Belief number 1. My parents and family are normal, but just have many problems. Or they're normal and just struggle a lot. Or, they're just difficult to get along with. Denial or being unaware are 2 of the biggest beliefs I find in ACONs, adult children of narcissists. If you're out of denial and have become more aware of your family dynamics, that's great. I might also mention even those who are out of denial occasionally will be thinking, but really, do I have narcissistic parents? Once they've even decided that really they have a narcissistic parent, they'll even go back on that and question themselves if they're really right about that or not. There's a reason for that. And the reason for that is we are engineered to protect the integrity of our parents, or the one who was nurturing for us as children, infants, and babies. That we need to take care of our caregivers because we need their care. And so it's very difficult to come to see your parent as defective in that way or problematic in that way, and then even to maintain it. Because we don't feel loyal, or we don't feel we'll get our needs met if we see them as narcissists. And that's some unconscious stuff that goes on within an adult child of a narcissist. And how many people do I run in each and every day who have never even considered their parents might be narcissistic, don't know about narcissism, have never even read much about narcissism, and yet they describe all the problems that go along with having a narcissistic parent. Even therapists do not acknowledge this illness or this problem within families. Even when clients bring it up to them, they ignore the client, they disbelieve the client, or feel it's just an unimportant information. And the same is true with alcoholic parents. I don't know how many clients that I've worked with over the years, having worked in kind of psychiatry, chemical dependency, marriage and family therapy, pastoral counseling, working in all those different areas, that when you have a client who is needing help with having grown up in a narcissistic home or an alcoholic home, you send them out to a therapist. They'll say, hey, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. And the therapist is going, so what? Well, let's get on to more important things. Or, I'm not sure you should diagnose your parents. Let's just talk about what struggles you're having. And they will just, disregard it, unfortunately. Even those who have become more aware of a parent who's self-absorbed or narcissistic, as I mentioned before, they'll still struggle with this belief because they have lived in this normalcy all of their lives. And it's hard to see that normalcy through another lens, like narcissism or even alcoholism. How many people I've worked with who are adult children of alcoholics who will come and say, it's hard for me to believe that my dad was an alcoholic. He has all of the symptoms. He's moderate to severe on substance abuse and clearly an alcoholic. But it's but that's just dad. You know how dad is. And it's just hard for them to stay with that reality. So I understand the difficulties. I hope you will comment, like, subscribe, and donate to this channel. These are free videos I offer to anyone. And also, I want to thank you for joining me today. I just had a 49-year-old client who had been in therapy for years and in recovery for years, and just 1 year ago discovered he was the child of a narcissistic parent. This put a lot of things in place for him. It even put how he was doing his own recovery in place for him. And I think coming to that awareness can be another layer of our coming out of denial and another layer of becoming more aware of our family system and our relationship systems. Now, why is this particular belief that, hey, my parent is normal but just problematic? Why is that belief so dangerous to an adult child of a narcissist? Because if I believe they're not normal and have a problem, then I will adjust and do many things differently than if I believe they're normal with just a problem. So I think that's what's a crucial difference is there. And also, if I believe my parent is just normal, but just hard to get along with, not narcissistic, just hard to get along with is how I label it, then I will continue to use normal rules of relationships, and I will regulate my relationship with them in normal kinds of ways, healthier kind of ways, with that understanding. And then what happens? It becomes a mess, and it becomes difficult. And I'm not protecting myself. I'm not even aware of how my information is even being used by the parent who's a narcissist. And so I think the parent should be reasonable about how I relate to them. But if they are not well, how are they going to be reasonable? I believe we can truly begin to heal and recover if we see reality for what it is. I understand that you're probably not a psychiatrist, though I've worked with a lot of psychiatrists as clients, and many of us have been taught not to diagnose other people. And so we think, oh, well, I shouldn't put that diagnosis on them. I shouldn't put that label on them. I've talked about this several times in other videos. It's not that I want to label someone. It's that I want to inform how I interact with this person based on the limitations that they have. Not trying to label them or, put a charm around their neck as to being a narcissist. That's not what I want. I want to learn how I should interact with them. And if I accept that narcissistic traits and patterns way of operating with them, I can be much more effective and also care for myself more. So it's not about labeling. It's about dealing with traits and symptoms. I also believe, even though none of you may be psychiatrists or therapists, or very few, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, quacks like a duck, are we wrong in kind of thinking they're in the duck continuum of understanding? And I don't think we're wrong in doing that. And I don't think we have to stay so far away from diagnosing. Again, I'm not trying to diagnose them for legal purposes, even medical purposes. It's so how I can operate with them. When you have a mental illness, I believe all bets are off. I remember working with a family who had been struggling with a bipolar adult child for years, and again, even into adulthood. They just could not formulate the problem or the solution for helping him. Once they understood their child's problem, they could do much better at regulating themselves, not pigeonhole him, not labeling him. They're not even worried about the diagnosis. They just now understand better how they can interact with him and in a healthier way. They can do much better at regulating themselves and how they interacted with their adult child. The parents had plenty of their own issues. They weren't, immune from having a diagnosis of their own struggles. But if we can understand the way things really are, it can bring clarity and relief and great acceptance and also more effective relationship skills. Same thing with alcoholism, addiction, narcissism, cluster B, all of those difficulties that we may run into. Even realizing, my parent was a codependent. Well, that may help you tremendously in how you operate with them and how you regulate the relationship you have with them. Narcissistic parents are not normal with a problem. They're abnormal with a problem. And again, I don't hate narcissists and I don't hate narcissistic parents. I'm just saying the reality is they don't act in healthy ways. For sure. By the way, there are a group of narcissists who have chosen to work on their narcissism and regulate themselves better. This is very tough work, and it's only been for a very minority people who are narcissists. And so again, it's a tough slog if they choose to do that. Most, their own illness keeps them out of treatment, care, and getting help for themselves. No different than, say, maybe bipolar. Love bipolar people. They can be wonderful. But it also can keep them, the disease itself can keep them from getting the help they need because they don't have that insight in how they impact other people. They think whatever they're doing is normal. And so why would I need to go get help? This is just how I am. And everybody's causing me to be upset. So why would I go get help for me if everybody out there is the one causing me to be upset? Sounds like a narcissist too, because narcissists can believe that way as well. I'm not unwell. You are, because you always make me upset. Number 2, my narcissistic parent controls my feelings of guilt, shame, and worthlessness. Over the years of emotionally sharing feelings back and forth between the narcissistic parent and the child, adult children believe others, as well as the narcissistic parent, controls their feelings of guilt, shame, and worthlessness. Now, I do realize they do become internalized, but that doesn't mean somebody's controlling me. That means I've internalized that process. Then I end up picking up the control where they left off. And then I use this control to continually feel shame inside, shame myself, guilt myself, and feel worthless. But that's my process working now as an adult. Back then it was them affecting me. Now they trigger those feelings within me. But they do not have the power to control those feelings for you. And that's an important distinction. When we are vulnerable to this transfer of feelings back and forth between the narcissistic parent and ourselves, it's important to believe it is not their ability to shame us. It is their ability to trigger us into feeling shame. There is a difference between those two. Shaming does not have to equal feeling shame. Guilting us does not have to equal feeling guilt, or continuing the belief that if the narcissistic parent sees us as worthless doesn't mean we are worthless or have to feel worthless. These are systems feelings or program feelings, I call them. And that's what we must battle against and find the true meaning of those feelings. We've learned to give the narcissistic parent way, way too much power over our inner life and our emotional process. Now, we've learned that growing up because they took that power. But as an adult, we then end up giving them too much power as adults. And that's us giving. We can do something about it if I'm the one doing it, like giving over my power. Or if I'm the one feeling shamed because they're shaming me as an adult. Now, if they're shaming you as an adult, you're feeling shame inside. It's your process that gets triggered. Nobody can make you feel shamed as an adult unless you choose that. I know that's a strong statement, but we have control over our feelings and must learn to control our feelings and have our own power over those feelings. Because why is it somebody I don't even know calls me stupid? Doesn't bother me a bit. Don't feel shame, don't feel guilt, don't feel anything uncomfortable. If Dad says that, if my dad were to say that, I'd immediately feel shame. Now, what's the difference? They both are saying the same thing because I've been programmed in this way. So I have the power to not feel shamed if someone calls me stupid. I have that power because I don't give them that much power to shame me. But yet I give Dad a tremendous amount of power to shame me. But if you notice, I'm the one giving that power. And the bad news is I'm giving them the power. The good news, if you're giving them the power, then you have the power to stop giving them the power. That's the good news. And I think that's what I help people to do. Gaining more emotional space from the narcissistic parent is critical. Emotional space. Sometimes we even need physical space, such as low or no contact. And if you notice, this other person that doesn't matter to me calls me stupid, there's enough emotional space between us that it doesn't affect me. I'm just kind of observing it and going, okay, well, that's weird. But I don't feel shame. I just think this is weird and maybe kind of crazy, whatever they're saying. As a recovering codependent and adult child of a self-absorbed parent, I want their words, beliefs, and feelings to be blocked. I don't want them going back and forth between us like they used to when I was growing up. As Ross Rosenberg states, observe and not absorb. Learning to not absorb is very important. And many of my videos address this important skill and process. A lot of videos address that. Because if I can get someone to observe and not absorb, if you notice with the first person who calls me stupid, I'm observing, not absorbing. When dad calls me stupid, I'm absorbing and probably not even hardly observing. And you see the difference. Please comment on this video. We comment almost every comment that someone makes. I hope you'll like and subscribe to the channel. Number 3, since I had a difficult childhood and difficult adulthood, being whole and healthy will never be possible. Often ACONs have felt hopeless, disempowered, feel helpless, and they feel they're broken beyond repair. They've been through a lot. We've been through a lot. Chronic trauma over many years takes away our hope, self-strength, self-esteem, self-worth. We feel discouraged. We have had few experiences of success to define, regulate, or being aware of ourselves. So we come to believe that it will never exist or ever be possible. Let me say, I work with hundreds of adult children of narcissists, and the potential for change is immense. Many have come to live as though they virtually never had a narcissistic parent growing up. And I say virtually. It's not perfectly. No, it's not perfect. But perfect isn't required to have healthy and be healthy and happy. If you can do a tremendous amount of healing, and if someone can live 70% free of the trauma and the past programming and gain a great sense of self, life really changes. Even if you got 30% that's still troubling, you can have a major change in your life. Stop believing the lie that you cannot recover and the belief that you are too broken to get better. It does take work. It does take mental healing, emotional healing, trauma healing, new skills, new beliefs, but life can begin anew. I've even told people I have 370 videos on YouTube. Watch every one of them. See if you are changed or not, no matter what the topic. The reason being is, every video I talk about on YouTube is all about the same topic. It's through different lenses. The adult child of a narcissist, the codependent, the adult child of an alcoholic. We still have to grow up and mature and recover. It doesn't matter what our trauma or past has been. Now, there's some unique differences and different kinds of problems. I think someone who is physically abused or sexually abused might have some different things they need to do recovery-wise and need to be aware of some of those things. Beyond that, they have the recovery task of becoming adult and mature and self-differentiated. Fourth belief, I can never be my true self with a narcissistic parent. All of us can work on being our true selves. I don't care what you've been through. I don't care what the nature of the relationship is. But being your true self differs with individuals that you're working with. We can all work on self-awareness, self-definition, self-regulation, this work of self-differentiation. It's a different experience of being yourself with a narcissistic parent than with others. Throw out the normal rules for being yourself with narcissistic parents. So many people will read the books about being themselves or being an authentic self. And I'm for being an authentic self. And I definitely think those books can be of help. The problem is if you use that model of being yourself with a narcissistic parent, there could be problems with that because you're not taking into consideration an illness that's a part of the relationship. So I'll just be clear with my narcissistic parent, honest with them, calmly listen to them, support my authenticity and support their authenticity. I'll care about me and I'll care about them. But actually, when you do that, there's only one party that's caring about you, and that's you. I will share with them how I feel, and I'll negotiate the relationship with them. But actually, being authentic, an authentic self with a narcissistic parent, we have to first know the illness and know about narcissism. We have to know about the problem we're dealing with. Knowing how your parent has operated in the past and how they presently operate in the emotional field and in the emotional system. We also may want to be more authentic by being less vulnerable and less engaging and less open. Everyone else would say, oh no, be more vulnerable, more engaging, and more open. That may not be the best advice for being yourself with a narcissistic parent. Avoiding and detaching from their volatility is a part of being my authentic self. Detaching from their beliefs about you. Maintaining strong internal and external boundaries with them. Becoming immune to their way of communicating. When I'm talking to a normal person or just a good old normal neurotic person, I don't have to be immune to their way of communicating because I can just hear what they're saying. We also want to stay out of triangles with the narcissistic parent, and that can include money, housing, control of the holidays, any ways that we are enmeshed with them, using a third dynamic of money or approval or housing, or again, the family holiday calendar. We also can be ourselves more by effectively handling flying monkeys. And the smear campaigns that happen, that's a part of being our true authentic self. Stopping defending yourself with narcissistic parents or those that they have talked to about you, don't be reasonable with them. Be strategic. And again, in normal relationships, we can be reasonable with people and be our authentic self. We have to be strategic with people who are suffering in this way. Commonly thought reasonable, oh, let me explain my mom is wrong about what she told you. Let me defend myself and say, no, I never did that. I don't know why she's making that up. That's just a lie. That's being reactive. Being strategic and being my authentic self, I might answer to Aunt Betty, who says, now your mom's saying you're doing this to her and you're doing that to her. And I'm sorry, Aunt Betty, you have been misinformed. And I understand the relationship between my mother and I. A medium strong response out of an authentic self to Aunt Betty or a flying monkey might be, does that sound like me, Aunt Betty? Does what she's telling you sound like me? And if you believe it, Aunt Betty, then you probably don't know me. A strong strategic response might be, well, Aunt Betty, you're free to believe all you've heard from my mom about me, but you do so at your own peril. I know you may have grown up with mom since she was a child, but I see you may not understand my mother at all. Those are some different layers of responses we can give to flying monkeys. And all of those, I think, represent being an authentic self with, let's say, flying monkeys. Fifthly, I cannot choose the type of relationship I want with my narcissistic parent. When shifting from a one-sided relationship, we come to learn we are powerless and unable to change my narcissistic parent. A one-sided relationship is we do it all their way, their wants, their needs, their beliefs, their desires, and we fawn along trying to get acceptance or get agreed with. An antidote to this is to begin to take control of your side of the relationship with your narcissistic parent. Historically, the narcissistic parent has been in control of their side of the relationship and your side of the relationship. I ask clients to decide what type of contact or relationship do you want with your narcissistic parent. Now, I have to add, you can't give me an answer that avoids these things. Knowing all the facts, taking into consideration that you have a narcissistic parent. Taking all that into consideration, what type of relationship would you like to have with them? What limited type of relationship, or no relationship, or a low contact relationship? The answer cannot be a fantasy relationship, nor can it include you changing them one iota. That's when we adultly and intentionally choose the relationship we have with someone else in our family. And nobody can make that decision for you but you. I do help individuals identify if the relationship with their parents needs greater self-differentiation or if it needs low or no contact, and that would be appropriate. Please comment, like, subscribe. I want to thank you for watching. Have a great day and be wise. Hi everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm a life and relationship coach, and I've been helping people learning about self-differentiation for 45 years. And this video is entitled Neutral Responses, the Power to Self-Differentiate. I hope you'll join my YouTube channel and you'll click the bell to be notified for new videos that come out. I also have a master class coming up. It should be in December or January. You can check on my website for that. And I hope you'll join me for that 4-hour master class that we'll be doing together. And it's on reactivity and reducing your reactivity. I think it will really help a lot of folks. So what are neutral responses? And neutral responses are very helpful as a means to stay yourself while connected with other people. Someone says to you, "I'm so upset that you're still dating that woman." Well, I'm sorry to hear you're upset. And again, it's a neutral response. I'm not addressing the push or pull or the defensive or being defensive or reactive. And I'm ignoring the issue that they have, which would be with me or you dating that woman. And I'm ignoring that issue, which is my issue and my choice, not theirs. So why would I address that? Why would I argue with them about who I'm dating? That's not for them to control or decide. So I'd simply say, well, I'm sorry to hear you're upset about that. Hey, you want to grab some lunch? I'm sorry to hear you're upset about that. Hey, how's Dad doing? Again, we are not pulled into the issue that they have. We stay more calm. We stay less reactive. So neutral responses are self-differentiation moves when other people are trying to bait us or pull us in with their issues or enmeshment. They are a don't take the bait responses is what they are. Because many times, and if somebody says, "Are you still dating that woman?" They're baiting me about my dating life. Well, I don't need to sort that through with them. I don't need to get their approval. And remember, there are a couple of rules that are really important. You don't have to answer any question that everyone or anyone asks of you, except to a police officer, a judge, a boss, or something like that. You are not required to answer any question, but you also don't have to get reactive to not answer it. And second of all, you never have to address the issues that are yours, not theirs, even though they think it's an issue for them too. Obviously, in the first statement, they were upset, "I'm dating this woman," or "still dating this woman." Well, that's their issue if they're upset with me dating her. It's not my issue. And I don't have to address other people's emotional states. That will just get me pulled in and baited in. Neutral statements help us keep us more separate while staying connected. I don't have to run away, nor do I have to be reactive or conflictual with them. Reactivity causes more distance, I have to run away, or conflict. And conflict is a result of reactivity. Just as overfunctioning can be as a result of reactivity, triangles as a result of reactivity, running away a result of reactivity, or complying and giving in and just going along with whatever they say and trying to make them feel better about the issue is reactivity. Neutral responses guide and force us to deal with what we really need to deal with or to work on. If we stay neutral, it brings up our issues to the forefront. In other words, because a lot of people say, well, that's hard for me to do, Jerry. It's hard for me to be neutral. I know it's hard. I've been practicing it for decades. It takes practice, and it's not easy. And many people say, oh, it just seems so easy for you. No, it hasn't been easy. It's taken me a long time to develop a healthier self and neutral responses. And that helps to keep me calm and thinking rather than reactive and feeling. And then my thoughts get all jumbled up. And when you're challenged to give a neutral response, just like when I go to the person who says, are you still dating that woman? And I go, well, I'm sorry to hear that's upsetting to you. And then I stop, find out what that brings up for you. And often what would be brought up for me is, I'm trying to get their acceptance and I'm acceptance seeking. I'm trying to get their approval and I'm approval seeking. I'm wishing they would know me better. I wish they had a better relationship with me. But all of those are immature wishes and wants. This is the way they are, and I'm accepting the way they are. But I have to deal with my neediness if I give a neutral response. And that's a healthy thing to do. Deal with your issues rather than trying to resolve those issues by, oh, well, let me tell you, she's really nice. I think you'd really like her. No, she's not like she used to be. And then I'm defensive, I'm reactive, and I'm trying for approval seeking. Neutral responses include 2 or 3 components. One is empathy or understanding. Second is declaring self. And thirdly, maybe being silent or saying less and not taking the bait. And when I said, oh my, you must be upset about that issue. Hey, what are we going to have for lunch? I was empathetic. I simply remained silent about the issue because it's not theirs to confront me with. It's my dating life. Why are they interfering in my dating life? Now, they could say, are you still dating that woman? And I could declare self, which is one of the components, and I could say, well, as a matter of fact, I am. I'm sorry you feel upset about that. Hey, what do you want to do today? Neutral responses include taking a stance that avoids their issues, their feelings, and their reactivity about my life. But I want to take a stance that it's not my circus, not my monkeys. If you're upset about me dating this woman, that's your monkeys, your circus. It's not mine. Because I get to decide who I date, for how long, in what way, or what kind of relationship I have. If you're upset by it, then we're enmeshed. Because adults respect other adults and respect other adults' choices. It doesn't mean we can't be caring or concerned if there's real problems with a relationship that we want to raise with another adult, but we do that respectfully, not reactively. Neutral responses help us to stay calm because often we engage others with our intensity and reactivity. And you can tell you're being reactive if you feel like you want to lecture, criticize, whine, complain, try to get acceptance, or try to be fused or have more togetherness or have this warm fusion that we have. Versus being neutral and non-judgmental and staying out of their circus. Because by me staying out of their circus, I'm telegraphing them to stay out of my circus. Who I'm dating is my circus, my monkeys. It's not your circus, your monkeys. Actually, this is a means by which we move closer to become more separate. I become empathetic, don't get into the issues that are theirs, and so I stay connected while being myself with a neutral response. And relationships are paradoxical. They're a paradox. To be closer, we need more separateness. To be more separate, we need more closeness. Both of those are true. And that's what neutral responses can help me with, is the second one. More separateness. To be more separate, we need to be closer. I'm engaging the person, but I'm not engaging in their monkeys, their circus about me. And so we actually are closer because I'm not rejecting them. I'm just not reacting to their reactivity. Neutral responses help us stay connected without cutting off and without being reactive. When our reactivity is activated by others, learning to give neutral responses help us reduce our reactivity and keeps us more calm and often has a positive effect on others. My coaching involves lots of role plays and using neutral and self-differentiating responses to grow ourselves up, to keep calm, and change the relationship dynamics and emotional process. Here are some examples of some neutral responses. Here's a detriangulation neutral response, because triangles often are a part of reactivity. A parent says, "Do you know what your sister did to me?" "No, but it must have upset you. I hope you've talked to her about it." "Not my circus, not my monkeys. Her circus, her monkeys. My sister's circus, her monkeys. But I can be concerned that she was upset. That's fine. I can be empathetic." Your husband told your father that he didn't really like the lamb we had for dinner. I think that is rude, and I hope you will talk to him, Mary. "Mom, I don't know if he said that or not. I assume he did, but maybe you or Dad could talk to him about what he said. I thought the lamb was great." Not my circus, not my monkeys. Your upsetness doesn't become something I own. It becomes something you have to take responsibility for as an adult, and an adult relationship with other people, without me triangulating in it. Rather than, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mom, that he said that. I'll go and talk to him. I hope everything's okay. I thought the lamb was great." Now I'm enmeshed. Now I'm looking for acceptance and approval. And now she's parenting me, and now I got to go parent my husband. Mary has to go parent her husband. And that's not going to work out well in their marriage. "Jerry, your son threw a cigarette butt in my flower garden." Well, that seems rude. You may want to talk to him about that. Mom says, "But that is why I'm telling you. And that's why I'm telling you." "Mom, my parenting years stopped long ago. I would just go and talk to him about his behavior or rudeness or insensitivity." Not my circus, not my monkeys. If my son's 35 years old, why am I supposed to go parent him? Because he did something you didn't like. You go and talk to him as an adult. And in fact, he'd probably be happy to talk with you about that and, might apologize or whatever. But still, not my monkey, not my circus. Saying no without feeling guilty responses are part of neutral responses we can have. "I want you and your family to be here on Christmas Eve for supper, and you probably should arrive about 5 p.m. and because of the dating of this video, the holidays are coming up. I know we've always come to your house, Dad, on Christmas Eve, but we've decided to do something special for our family Christmas Eve this year. So I'd like to plan a different day and time with you and Mom. You have to be kidding, Dad said. No kid of mine would not show up for Christmas Eve dinner. Shame. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Guilt. It's already October and we're planning our normal family gathering with all the family. Well, Dad, we just recently decided this and we felt 2 months' notice would be enough and plenty of time to let you know. But, well, you know this will cause us as a family not to be with everyone on the same day, and it will upset everybody, and your mom will feel hurt. Well, Sally and I are looking forward to something different and special for our own family this Christmas Eve. We would be available any other time to get together, Dad. Now, if you notice, I didn't, not my circus, not my monkeys, that everyone else would be upset. Mom would be hurt. I'm not making anybody be hurt. I'm declaring something that I would like to do as an adult and with my own family. I don't have to fix everybody's feelings about that. Now, I could be more empathetic and say, I'm sure this change probably would be, and I think I even said, I'm sure that might feel disappointing, Dad. So I can be empathetic. I'm sure Mom might be disappointed. My siblings might be disappointed. But this is something that, Sally and I want to do. And just because they're disappointed doesn't mean I have to live under the threat that if they're disappointed, I'd better change. Welcome to the world of disappointment. We all have disappointments. And I'm not doing this with any malice. If you notice in my response, I share some empathy. I declared myself of what we wanted to do. I stayed silent about some things I have no control over, like how everyone will be upset. I can't fix all of that and don't need to. It's not for me to fix anyway. And if you'd like, Dad, I could say, if you'd like, Dad, I'd be happy to tell Mom and tell the siblings what Sally and I plan to do this year. So I'm willing to take the heat from them, but I'll do the same neutral responses with them and go, I'm sure it's disappointing, but this is what we've chosen to do. And so I would talk with each one individually. I don't have to have Dad go tell them all. Dad, I'm willing to go and talk to everybody. Don't worry about that. It's my choice. And I don't have to triangle through Mom and Dad to tell siblings and everybody. Then everybody gets in an uproar and it becomes a major triangulated mess. I care about the feelings of others, but I keep my foot nailed to the floor so I can only go around in these circles and not be persuaded to give in or to comply. So I want my foot nailed to the floor this is what we're doing for Christmas Eve, and we're not doing what we've always done with the family for Christmas Eve. I'm just nailing my foot to the floor. Now, I don't mind talking about how empathetic I feel or how that may feel disappointing or hurtful to Mom, if that's what she's going to feel. But I have no control over that. They are not my monkeys, not my circus. I care, but it's still not my circus. Those are your feelings, not feelings I'm making everybody have. Because believe it or not, a family could be, well, I understand that. Why don't we plan another day? Or why don't you get together with the siblings at this time, Mom and Dad at this time? I mean, there's lots of options. To work on neutral responses, we can learn to do these things because it takes practice. And again, I've had people share with me, oh, Jerry, you're just so good at those neutral responses. You just know what to say. There were long, long years I had no idea what to say. And I would say the wrong things. I would get reactive. I would try to comply. I would try to fix everybody's feelings. I did all of that. Then I began to work on giving neutral responses in a calm way, which calms me down and many times helps to keep the other person calm down. Because calmness can be contagious if you hold on to it. You can first write down what they might challenge you about. Write down your possible responses that are non-reactive. Or as I've talked about, what would Betty do? What would Betty say? Think you're the neighbor, and how would your neighbor respond to your parents about changing Christmas Eve? Or how would Betty share with them about not being able to come to Christmas Eve? Somebody who's detached and not enmeshed. What would Betty say? Or you can say, what would Jerry say? I have a lot of people who do that too and say, well, I'm trying to think, well, what would Jerry say in this situation? You can write down your possible responses and practice them so you do not go into autopilot or reactivity pilot when you are addressing difficult or highly charged situations. Use a calm and mature voice. Make sure you are calm. You can even keep it low level. Don't make it high level volume. Now, there may be a challenge. And they may say, oh, well, this can't be. We got to change this. What would you say if they said, and you probably know what their challenge would be. What would be your next response? What would their next challenge be? What would your next response be? And if you have that worked out ahead of time, you'll be a lot more calmer and be ready. And many times we can predict the behavior of other people in our family. We know exactly what they're going to say. Because when I do role plays with clients, they know exactly what their families would say. And then I would say this, and I'd say, well, what would your sister say to that? What would your husband say if I said that? And they know. Because we know what those responses are going to be for the most part. You can prepare your neutral, non-reactive responses. And of course, whenever we make a change, there's 3 stages of resistance to go through. Why are you doing this? Secondly, you need to stop doing this. And fourthly, stop doing this or else. And if we can stay calm, neutral, and non-reactive through all those stages, then a greater acceptance tends to come over time. And we're training others to experience and accept the new me without doing harm, without doing damage. I don't have to yell or to be in conflict or overfunction or triangulate, or I don't have to do any of those things. In me choosing to be me. Over time, they're going to go, well, you know how Jerry is. He's just going to do whatever he wants to do. Well, good. That's what I want to do in my life, is do whatever I want to do. I'm an adult. I get to do that. Now, that doesn't mean I don't care about my family or care about my spouse, care about my kids. I care about neighbors. I care about everyone. But I still have a right to do what I want to do as an adult. I want to share with you, I've got that 4-hour masterclass coming up probably in December or January, taught by me. We will be sending out notices to everyone on our email list, reducing your reactivity. I hope you'll click subscribe, click the bell so you can be notified when new videos come out. Join as a YouTube member. That really helps us to produce these videos. It only costs $1.99 a month. And you can join as a YouTube member, and you can see the button for join and become a paid member for $1.99 a month. And that helps us produce these videos for you. I hope you'll follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Have a great day. And be wise. Hi, everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm a life and relationship coach. And I see individuals online. I work with individuals in groups. And I have a website and also a workshop coming up. But this particular video is entitled Staying on Task Even When Experiencing Discomfort. Jenny Brown lists in her book, Growing Yourself Up, the 7 characteristics of a mature or more self-differentiated inner adult. And this is number 2. You can watch my other video on the first one, and I'm going to explain and talk about all 7. They're all very important. I think for those who are in recovery, that this process of staying on task is a way for us to not abandon the inner child. If we as the adult stay on task, we then are protecting the inner the inner child, and we're also caring for them and not abandoning them. Because often when we meet resistance in relationships or systems, we tend to abandon ourselves and abandon the inner child and continue to operate in the system in a status quo way, and no changes are made. The inner child becomes disappointed and hurt and abandoned, and we as an adult feel more cowardice or worthless or shame. And so it's very important that we learn to stay on task even when we experience discomfort. Peter Senge, in his book, The Fifth Discipline, in which he applies systems thinking to corporations, businesses, and organizations. It's an excellent book. He's kind of the creator of the learning organization used by a lot of corporations to help them break out of their quick fix thinking and start using systems thinking, which is a more long-term approach, which actually provides more change and actually allows change to happen. Quick fixes often don't create change, but only for a moment. And he writes, resistance is a response by the system trying to maintain the implicit system goal, or the implicit system belief, or the implicit system role, or the implicit system addiction, or the implicit system dysfunction. Because it wants to maintain that dysfunction. And so if you begin to operate differently, it's going to resist you. The system, the family, the church, workplace, whatever system we're in is going to resist us. And so if we understand that there is this resistance, then it's very important that we're able to sustain ourselves through that resistance and find a new setting and a reset on the other side of us functioning in the system or in the relationship or in the marriage. So again, it's staying on task when experiencing discomfort. Oftentimes, those of us, me included, for many, many, many years, we are used to folding at the first sign of resistance when changing our role in the system. When we want something to change for us, we then present that change to the system, we get resistance, and then we fold. And the status quo, the equilibrium, the homeostasis continues. And then we feel discouraged, upset, and much like we have failed and hopeless, there is no use. Because if the system won't accept the new me, then why even try? Well, that's a quick fix or a very linear way of looking at change. If we look at change in a systems way, we can see the value in persistence or in courage or in consistency that, like Brene Brown talks about in her books when we're self-differentiating. And Brene Brown is another Murray Bowen Family Systems author. And so is Jenny Brown, Andrea Shera, Harriet Lerner, those are good books for you to see change in a systems way rather than just a cause and effect way, which oftentimes will fail. So when we are on task, we want to learn to stay in place regardless of what the system is doing, and stay out of the emotional glue that's happening, and resist the emotional glue and the pull and the enmeshment or the rejection. I had a client I was working with yesterday, and she remembered some of my words, and she said she was feeling so much better because she always kind of feared rejection. She's a very good professional, wonderful person, a beautiful woman, and she feels so insecure when she feels rejected by a boss or a coworker or someone like that. And she was saying, well, Jerry, as you say, when I sense that rejection, I realize it really can't hurt me. It doesn't make my pants fall down. And she used another phrase too. I can't remember what it was. But right, it doesn't make my pants fall down. Why am I worried about their rejection? And so we learn those tools to be able to stay engaged with our new change. And so we want to learn to stay in place if we're trying to make a change in the system. And I'll give you an example of this at the end of the video here. We want to learn to stay in place, stand your ground, make your change intentional versus reactive. If we are reacting, then we're probably not going to affect a change. No matter, I don't care if we yell and scream or whatever we do, it won't affect a change. It will keep things the same. If we are intentional, then we can really make a change in our functioning in the system. And again, our issues, and we're going to be triggered by others when we begin to make a change, and that's acceptable. That should be expected. I'm sorry, not expected. And how can we strategically deal with that? Increase your ability to hang in there and to tolerate this discomfort. The discomfort is the system's feelings. So when we begin to make a change, Dad, I wish you would not tell me that I'm stupid. That's very rude and I don't like that. And he said, well, you've always been stupid. I don't know what's wrong with you. Now I start to feel the system's feelings of shame. I'm not really stupid. I don't know what I'm not even sure Dad really even thinks I'm stupid. He's just using that as a way to keep the system in a status quo equilibrium, to continue the same dysfunction. And so when I have that system's feeling of shame, which is what it is, if I do something shameful, then I might feel shame. That's a true feeling. If he says I'm stupid, then I start to feel shame, and that comes from the relationship system. It's okay to ignore systems feelings. Don't ignore your true feelings, but it's okay to ignore systems feelings. And a lot of people don't know what feelings to ignore and what feelings to feel and let go of. Practice persevering and exercising your courage. Don't wait for it to happen, but to make it happen. And I've always said anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. So even poor attempts at self-differentiation is better than reactive attempts at making a change. Now that's important. Poor attempts at self-differentiation and intentional work is better than reactive interventions that we try. Don't wait for it to happen. Many times we will wait, well, I'll do it when the system will accept me. I'll do it when Dad's not going to shame me. I'll do it. Well, you'll be waiting for decades, if forever, for that to change. And it probably won't. So we're learning to change us while accepting that the system is not going to change. And when we do that, when we change us while accepting the system is not going to change, we actually end up changing the system. Not directly, but indirectly, because we're bringing more calmness and more a sense of self to the system, which is what it needs and what it lacks. So staying on task. Trying something new always involves this characteristic. Use intention versus passion or systems feelings to drive you to be a true self in a system. Use an intentional. You will be more calm, will be less reactive. Don't be intense, but work, act, and feel calmer. Work on feeling calmer and being calmer rather than intense when we're making changes in a relationship, a marriage, a family, workplace. Avoid giving in because you'll lose self at that point. Then we become more our pseudo-self, which is a self based on what others want, desire, and need you to be. That's a pseudo-self, and many of us have learned that growing up. An intense blow-up becomes reactive and confrontational, which does nothing for a system, only to make it worse or more, or tightens the relationship even more and tightens the dysfunction. Intentional ignoring of the system's feelings. Just like the client who talked to me who's in business, who's in New York City, and she realizes that I can ignore this feeling of rejection. This is a systems feeling from growing up from my parents who were very rejecting, and now I see rejection around every bush. And I can ignore that feeling. I don't have to give it life. I don't have to feed it. I can ignore that and work to ignore it. Now you're saying, well, Jerry, is that easy? No, it's not easy. Of course not. But any work at doing that will provide a lot of benefit, even if it's to a small degree, because you're working in the right direction and it will begin to build on itself. Let me give you a brief example at the end of this video here. One of the first self-differentiation attempts that I tried was, I was a pastor at the time. I don't think I was a bishop. I think I was a pastor at the time. My father had passed away. And at our family, we all gathered around for family meals. And everyone looked to me to give the grace or pray for the meal before we started. And I began to notice that's kind of a pattern. Everybody's just expecting that of me. And, I really don't want to do that. This is my family. I'm not the family pastor. I'm Jerry in the family. I don't want to be the pastor here. I'm the pastor everywhere else. I would like the freedom to do what I would like to do, and I don't really want to do this. And I don't want to do it out of guilt or out of shame or out of they'll be disappointed or why can't I just do it? It's no big deal. I have all those kinds of voices going on, which are systems voices and systems feelings. They're not my true feelings. My true feelings are, I don't want to do this. I like to do this by choice, not because this is your role. And so I began to talk to my mom prior to a Thanksgiving dinner. I can't remember if it was Thanksgiving, Christmas, or when it was. We were all gathering. And like 3 weeks before, I'm saying, hey, Mom, I want to let you know that I just would rather not give the family prayer. I think some other people could do that. She totally ignored what I said. She wasn't even hearing me. So then I thought, well, I better talk to her again about it. So I did. Alerted her again. Mom, hey, I just want you to know that I'm, because last time she didn't even hardly respond. So I think she was saying, it doesn't matter what you want, Jerry. You will be doing it when we get to the meal. So I thought I better talk to her again. And so I did. And she said, I understand. And then ignored me. And I think I might have done it one more time. In fact, I finally said, Mom, if I'm asked to do it, I probably will defer. So I just want you to know that. Again, kind of blank, ignoring it. Doesn't matter. Jerry, this is your role. You need to do this. So then we get to the family meal. Then we're right before we're supposed to eat. Everybody looks at me. Mom looks at me and said, Jerry, could you return thanks or could you give a prayer for the meal? I prepared for that because I thought that was going to happen. I had lots of anxiety, lots of feelings of shame, didn't know what was going to happen or if people would not like me, or here was my grieving mom having lost my dad and I'm treating her badly when I'm just wanting to do what I would like to do. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, including my mother. But at that point, I had prepared intentionally to stay the task, no matter how discomforting it was, and simply say, well, as I had shared with you, Mom, I think I would rather not be the one who gives the prayer for the meal. And then stayed quiet. That was the most difficult quietness I had felt probably in my life. I didn't know what was going to happen. Was my brother going to blow up? Was he going to be mad? Was he going to, why are you treating Mom so badly? Why can't you just do this simple little prayer? You're a pastor. Why can't you do this? So again, it's why can't you do your role, Jerry? What's wrong with you? And so I continued to stay quiet for this pregnant moment that felt like hours. And then finally, Mom decided to go ahead and pray herself. And so there was a great deal of anxiety, and then when Mom prayed, the anxiety came down, and there was calmness. And I felt, having watched the family later, that it provided an awful lot of relief and less anxiety for the family, in that I had done that with calmness, though I was still feeling anxious and worried, but I persevered through it, staying calm, or at least acting calm. And I wasn't blaming anybody. I didn't say, well, Mom, I told you that I wasn't going to do this. What's wrong with you? I don't need to shame her, or this is just my I position, self-differentiation, no one else's responsibility. I'm not blaming the family for putting me in this role. I'm just deciding this is what I would like to do. And do it in a calm way and an adult way. And actually, I think the family was never the same. In a positive way. Now, not all circumstances like that work out well. We have to practice that. Sometimes there'll be greater resistance. And I understand that. And in other videos, I've talked about the 3 stages of resistance that we have to go through before the system resets with a new you and a new, less anxiety. So, I wanted to bring this to you today and give you an example. I hope that this has been a help to you. I have a workshop coming up in a couple of months, and I hope you'll join the workshop. I have coupons for people who are site members on my website. You can give me a call if you'd like to work with me. I'd be happy to do that. And thank you for watching. Have a great day. Hey, hi everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm a life and relationship coach, and I've been helping people in recovery for 45 years now. And I wanted to talk about a topic today, which is the role of systems anxiety for trauma recovery. It's I think a breakthrough topic. There's not a lot written about it, though it is referred to, and I'm going to show you how some trauma books will mention it, but they don't give a lot of help in what you do about that. And that's why I'd like to provide a little more help or understanding about this particular topic. Please join this channel. I hope you also become a member and be a financial support to the channel. I also have a workshop coming up on February 6, 2021, Getting Your Family Out of You, which is also an important topic for those who are trauma recovery victims. I myself am a trauma recovery victim, and I'm a survivor of trauma. And so this has been a personal topic for me as well. And I want to talk to you about some things that maybe don't get talked about very much. For many who have suffered trauma, I see a lot of folks working on their trauma specifically or directly and its effects. As I read many popular books on trauma recovery, I see the focus on the PTSD, the CPTSD symptoms, and I also believe this is very important work. However, I don't tend to see where the effects of transgenerational or intergenerational anxiety or transgenerational traumas affect the current trauma. And in fact, I will even mention in, I think, a very good book, Complex PTSD by Arielle Schwartz. And she even mentions in one small section, which again, I think is a nod to this whole notion of transgenerational trauma and how it affects trauma victims. She says, furthermore, Dr. Siegel suggests that adults who have unresolved childhood trauma can lack a coherent narrative about their past. When these adults become parents, they have a reduced capacity to be mindful about the way their emotions and actions impact their children. These parents are more likely to become hijacked by emotions, the emotions of jealousy, resentment, or anger, leading to abusive or neglectful behaviors. And that's from the book, The Complex PTSD Workbook. I would suggest that for anyone who experiences complex PTSD. So she gives a nod and a hint, Dr. Siegel does, to transgenerational trauma, which there's transgenerational anxiety. And a good example of that is, let's say a grandfather commits suicide. How does that trauma get experienced by the next generation, let's say if my grandfather committed suicide, how would that affect my mother, let's say if that was her father? She was a child, he commits suicide, she then is impacted by that and is traumatized. Now we have anxiety from the suicide passed down to her and the trauma. Then that trauma, anxiety, is passed down to me. Then I experience a trauma. And now I have two problems: transgenerational anxiety and trauma, and then the new trauma. And I think this is where trauma victims can gain some insight and help and recovery in healing the current trauma by healing the transgenerational anxiety and trauma that has come down to us. And whether that trauma be alcoholism, that's why we talk about adult children of alcoholics, or narcissism and narcissistic abuse, that gets passed on to children of narcissistic parents. We're traumatized by that. And then we have our own trauma, let's say when we get married, and we marry a narcissist and are abused financially, emotionally, sexually, any number of ways. And now we have the family transgenerational anxiety and trauma, and now the new trauma. And I believe working on both is the key to recovery. If we just work on the present trauma, we may miss the powerful healing for us to work on the transgenerational recovery or the trauma. And that's why, for example, I'm doing a workshop on getting your family out of you. And for those who watch this video after that workshop would be available up on my website, www.jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com. Because getting the family out of us gives us a great deal of prophylaxis or protection if trauma were to happen to us. It also helps loosen up this trauma by healing this trauma, the family and the current trauma. And we know from research that self-differentiation, or the work of detaching from all of those emotional currents that come down through the generations from the trauma. We also know that there's even genetic parts of that or biological parts of that, or maybe the cell itself has information about a trauma that gets passed on biologically. There's information about that trauma that can get passed on. I think in years to come, we're going to learn more about that. We're much more connected to our family of origin and our family of origin past generations than we realize. To acknowledge that gives us a way to heal. Because if we can detach and become a self and self-differentiated, then all of this flowing from the past is not fueling our anxiety and our trauma and our stress. So that if a trauma were to occur, there's far less of this past trauma that gets triggered by the present trauma. And in healing, if we can work on our trauma symptoms, as this workbook would help you do, and we work on self-differentiation and functioning differently in the family, emotionally, then you can really have a real bulwark of strength and a solid sense of self, which again is an excellent prophylaxis for any trauma that would happen in the future. And in simple terms, if someone, let's say someone has a panic disorder. Now, we can talk about all the origins of panic disorder, but let's say somebody has a panic disorder and then they are traumatized, whether through abuse, violence, rape, or something such as that, and they get traumatized, then don't you see the double whammy that's happening? I have an anxiety disorder, now I have a new trauma. And so we have to work on both. Let's say someone doesn't have a panic disorder, and let's say they come from a fairly healthy family and have more of a sense of self and are not so fused or enmeshed with their family of origin. Then they experience a trauma. Many times that trauma can be less traumatic because we don't have all of that from the past flowing into this. And so, and in fact, I know of people, and I think you probably do too, who have experienced trauma and they are not nearly as impacted by somebody else who may have experienced the same trauma, but they are traumatized and their whole life is a mess. Other people have that trauma. It's troubling and it's problematic, but they don't become an alcoholic. They don't ruin their lives. They're able to function in a more healthy way. Why is there a difference between the two? Trauma is trauma. Because I think there's a lot more that's residual. There's a lot more that's within us that gets triggered. And where people are not triggered, then they're dealing with the event of the trauma. And that doesn't tend to overwhelm us as much. Or another way you may think about it, if I have 5 units of transgenerational anxiety and trauma, and I'm fused with my family and I'm enmeshed with them emotionally, maybe I don't like them, maybe we fight all the time, but I'm still emotionally fused with them. Then I experience a trauma. So if I have 5 units of transgenerational anxiety, stress with trauma, and then I add a new trauma that might be 6 units of stress or anxiety, now I have 11 units on a scale of 0 to 10 of anxiety and stress and systems anxiety, as well as the trauma anxiety. And now I'm at 11 or 12. Well, how is that going to feel? Absolutely horrible. So if somebody comes in with a 1 level of systems anxiety from their family of origin, have 6 units of new trauma from being traumatized, physically violence. Mine was physical violence and a break-in to a house in which they robbed my mother and I. She was elderly and me, and it was horrible. And now I have 6 units of this trauma Well, what's my total units of trauma? 7. 7 on a 10 scale is better than 11 or 12 on a 10 scale. And so that's why healing both of those is so critical. And again, just like the suicided grandfather, the physical abuse that went on in grandparents affects their children and affects us, for example. And that's all flows through the transgenerational emotional process. And it's not just thinking about it differently. That's where I might disagree with Dr. Siegel in there. Well, we'll just have a different conception of it, or we'll have a better narrative about what happened if we deal with those problems. And I think it's deeper than just a better narrative. In Bowen family systems, we are connected to that emotional field in which we are all interconnected emotionally. And so we want to learn to detach so all of those flows of anxiety start to get cut off. Those umbilical cords of anxiety that we have from our family of origin. Let's talk about an example like Christine. We'll call her Christine. Christine experiences, or it could be John, but we'll call it Christine. Christine experiences an overprotective dad. Very protective. Again, dad is overprotective because he had a sister that was traumatized by a parent for physical abuse, and he couldn't protect her. So now because of that trauma, and now because of that anxiety, dad now is overprotective of Christine. Oddly enough, Christine marries a narcissistic abuser and has some physical abuse in marriage, and now is traumatized as a result. Do you see how all of those pieces flow together? And it creates a real problem for Christine. Now Christine has the family of origin anxiety and enmeshment, because overprotection is enmeshment. Traumatization enmeshes us and overfuses us in a relationship system or family system. And so now she has this anxiety, which produces feelings of inadequacy and helplessness from growing up with her father. And now she experiences this new trauma, and now she's got the 11 or 12 on a 10 scale anxiety and stress. Working on both of those things, I believe, can now help the trauma victim reduce that enmeshment, that anxiety, bolster a sense of self, and we can reduce that double whammy. And I think, again, so many work on the trauma, they don't work on all the units of stress and anxiety that they had coming into the trauma. And I think that's where we can gain some real positive growth and healing. And I think there are many people who are trauma survivors who get stuck in their trauma because they haven't looked at their family of origin. And I don't just mean look at it. I mean, they haven't resolved their umbilical cord to their family of origin and all of its emotional field, the trauma, the anxiety, and what's gone on in the past. I think also, if you have this family of origin trauma, and it could be grandparents, great-grandparents. I have a client whose father was killed in Israel and was killed by a terrorist, and he was 12, and that's traumatic. To dramatically lose a parent to a car accident. I remember I was in grade school, and one of my best friends' mother died in a horrible car crash. And I remember I was traumatized for a long time, and I wasn't even in the accident. It wasn't even my mother, but I was traumatized that he lost his mother. And it was very difficult. And I carried that anxiety and stress for a long time. Dreamed about it, thought about it. And so even being a witness to trauma can be traumatizing. Maybe you were the golden child and didn't get beaten, but you watched a parent beat another child. That's traumatizing. And so it also then produces these false feelings, or what I call systems feelings, of shame, guilt, worthlessness, and fears that are created by the system that keeps us in the system and in the role that we're in. Because those feelings often play a part to keep us in our roles. Or depression, or anxiety disorders even, to keep us in that position that we operated in our family of origin. So I thought this would be an important topic to discuss today, because I don't think it's talked about very much, and I wanted to bring it to you to have you understand the two sides of trauma recovery. Trauma recovery is healing the anxiety, stress, and trauma that you had before you had your trauma as an adult. And then we also deal with the current trauma that we experience as an adult. And when you add those two traumas together, that's quite a bit. And I don't see a lot of people working with folks to help them with both sides of the coin and both sides of the issue that really propel this high anxiety. I might want to leave a couple of tips. So what should you do if you're a trauma victim, and what can you do to heal? Let me just give you a few tips just right here, not a lot. There's lots that could be said. Ross Rosenberg's technique of observe versus absorb is a way of detaching from the emotionality of the system and of the interaction. Observe versus absorb when you're interacting with other people, your family of origin, your spouse, and other folks. I would watch my video on systems feelings versus true feelings and learn to identify feelings for what they are and how they function. I would tend to feel less and think more if I'm a trauma victim. Now, there's places for true feelings. Certainly we have feelings, and I certainly had true feelings with my traumatization. But I also know I don't want to live out of my anxiety. And so I may need to work on thinking more and feeling less. And then there are other times if you're in a therapy session or a coaching session, you may want to feel more than think more if you're in that environment or a safe environment. In a non-safe environment, you want to think more and feel less. Often as trauma victims, our emotional system is overwhelmed. Then we add systems feelings and we become overwhelmed by the tsunami of feelings. So we need to learn the time and the place for feelings and when we should avoid feelings. And I always hear everybody saying, oh, feelings are always good. Always feel your feelings. And for people who have numb feelings or grew up with paralyzed feelings, certainly we have to learn to identify and express feelings. But feelings can be felt at the wrong time and can overwhelm us. Sometimes feelings take the driver's seat. Sometimes they should take the back seat. And knowing when those times are is very important. I would recommend, for dealing with some of this family systems anxiety, reading authors like Harriet Lerner, Lerner, Jenny Brown, Roberta Gilbert, Kathleen Smith, or Murray Bowen, though his tend to be more for practitioners, Peter Titelman, Titelman. There are, again, some good books by those authors to take a look at the work of self-differentiation. And that's what I have trained my coaches to do, to work on both the trauma and the family anxiety and trauma that we've had growing up, and how it flows through us so that we can heal both the trauma and the past and lower our anxiety and feel more like a self, have more self-confidence, and have more self-awareness and more freedom to be ourselves. I hope today has been helpful. I appreciate you listening today. Please join the workshop this Saturday. It's from 1 to 5 p.m. Getting Your Family Out of You. Go to my website and you can sign up. Again, I want to thank you for watching. Have a great day and be wise.